Hey everyone, this is Wayne here at Celebrate Kids. Say, before we jump into today's podcast, I want to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by our friends at Creating a Masterpiece. Creating a Masterpiece is an amazing resource for moms and dads to help them teach their kids art. And even I would say moms and dads can learn art themselves by the incredible interactive teaching that they do through different art projects, whether it's pottery, painting, drawing. They'll take you through the different resources that you need to do the project and then actually teach you how to do the project. At the end of the day, everyone builds something amazing because it's a step by step guide to help you execute the creation that they tell you you can create. It doesn't only teach you things to follow step by step, but they also awaken different smarts inside of you, which is what we're going to talk about today on the podcast. It's really important for us to give our kids exposure and opportunity to develop and awaken different smarts, as Dr. Kathy says. It helps prepare them for big things later in life. And creating a masterpiece is an amazing resource for a smart that oftentimes we might struggle with being picture smart. I want to encourage you to go over to their website and check it out at creatingamasterpiece.com. Now let's jump into the podcast.
When we slow down and we make time and take time for things that are new and different and maybe even challenging, we discover more of our capabilities. It is good for the soul to discover more about who we can become.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
You know, Dr. Kathy, today on the Celebrate Kids podcast, the daily segment Facing the Dark, I want to look at an interesting topic. So there's an estimated 3 million Israelis who've been affected mentally by the war that's happening over there between Israel and Palestine. And it includes thousands of teens who've been displaced from their homes near Gaza and the northern border. The Society for Protection of Nature in Israel, it's called SPNI, has responded with an innovative program called Resilience Journeys. They take the young people from Israel and bring them out into natural landscapes. There's a plethora, an abundance of stunning natural beauty that's outside. And so this Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel is now taking traumatized teenagers to heal and build resilience out in nature. Now, Dr. Kathy, you talk about awakening the smarts in kids. Why do you think that this nature journey works to rebuild kids, especially as they're working in really some hard situations and hard realities? They've been affected by war. Why do you think that that kind of makes an impact or a difference for these kids? What are your thoughts there on that?
Yeah, nature is calming. Even if you would say you don't like it, or you don't need it, nature is calming. Everything from the wind on your face to the sunshine and the vitamin D, we know that that affects us greatly, to the challenge to climb the mountain and to decide how much or to find out how much you're capable of. And frankly, the fun and the camaraderie and the let me help you get to the top of the mountain, or let me help you walk down into the valley, which can also be really challenging. So I think there's a lot of reasons that this is a brilliant idea, get out of the house, if you will. What struck me, I just was at a convention and I met a missionary family who had spent 7 years in Israel, and now they're back. And what's the stories I heard of this mom, that the dad was often gone, and the mom having to listen closely for the alerts on her device that would say, get to your safe space, and taking her 4 children into a really small room and, you know, h- cuddling together while you wait for the alarm to go off. Inside felt safe, but it really wasn't safe because they knew where the families lived and they knew that every house would have a safe spot. So it's just a matter of finding time, finding which door would open it. Outside, like, you're vulnerable. Like, maybe there's a cave, maybe there's a big tree you can stand behind, but these kids who are learning resiliency on these resiliency journeys they're out in the middle of nowhere, feeling vulnerable, but yet free, and being mentored and being counseled by people in those situations. I think it's brilliant. And when the smarts are awakened, we have more to rely on. Everything from learning, nature smart people think with patterns. That's how you know it's a bluebird and not a blue jay. Or I can remember that this is, the valley of death, and this is the valley of life or whatever they're named, right? I remember that this is the valley that leads into the greenest pasture. So I remember that that's the name of the valley. They think with patterns and they have a visual acuity to remember, but was and saw is also a pattern. And 6 and 9 is a pattern. H2O is a pattern. And the 7 things that happen to begin a war is a pattern. And so you're actually awakening something that can bring joy and peace and satisfaction and contentment and a new discovery of something you like. And it can also have very practical goals to the life that you want to live.
You know, Dr. Kathy, as you're talking, you kind of give a little bit of an explanation of how kids can rebuild security, especially by being out in nature and even by having different smarts awakened, where they start to see that there are security, maybe structures or mechanisms inside of being smart in those different places and areas. But I want to ask you, what if somebody's not naturally smart in that way, right? Like, so what if a kid doesn't like nature or they don't like logic? And we want to awaken it in them because it does enable them to be, I would say, maybe more well-rounded or maybe even more resilient for another obstacle that they're going to face later on in life. How do we awaken the smarts for a kid that is actually kind of a chore?
Yeah, you just made really good points that when we have all 8, we actually feel better about ourselves, we can relate to more people, we can problem solve in more ways, we can discover a new future, we can develop friendships. So we know, and we talk about this here at the ministry, that we become like the people we hang out with. Show me your friends and I will show you your future. Like, I think it's honest to say that you and I have positively affected each other as workmates, if you will, and as we've become friends, and it's a beautiful thing to see. So, I think, having all the smarts is so beneficial, and they're awakened with new experiences. So these kids who have been, hunkering down in their homes and maybe fearful of going out and about, man, to create a new experience awakens both interest and ability. A kid who's never been to a zoo before, a kid who's never been to a science museum, a kid who's never taken a tour. Like there's a company here near where I live that makes bread, and if you've never been to a tour of a factory, like it's fascinating to see, and the smell is just incredible. So new experiences can cause interest and ability to lift. To explore is huge. When we explore with our hands and our eyes and our ears and even our mouths, not sand and rocks. I'm not saying that. No pine cone in the mouth, but when we explore with all of our senses, then new discoveries build a new potential. Discussions are huge. We awaken the smarts through discussions that are different, which again, these Israeli teens can be having as they sit in the shade and eat a lunch. There's probably a discussion that may not have happened within their own family unit when they're, if you will, stuck in their home. Cultural events are an excellent way to awaken. I grew up in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area, and there was German Fest and Irish Fest and the Greek Festival and all those things. My parents made sure that Dave and I went with them and our grandparents to so many of those kinds of things where we tasted new foods and heard new music and the color of the outfits that they danced in. I can go there in my mind very quickly. Um, Spending time alone and with others also awakens the smarts. Less technology awakens the smarts. And so praise God for these children who are out and they're journeying and they're not doing it with tech and they can really see a mountain and touch the sand rather than seeing a picture of a mountain and a picture of sand. It's so different. Slowing down and quieting down, right, Wayne? When we slow down and we make time and take time for things that are new and different and maybe even challenging, we discover more of our capabilities. It is it is good for the soul to discover more about who we can become.
You know, Dr. Kathy, as you're talking, I think, yeah, that's great. We can do those things, but it involves, I think, a little bit more than just bringing our kids outside and taking a walk or picking up a pine cone, right? I mean, sometimes introducing our kids to to a smart or introducing them to a new experience is incredibly difficult. It's a chore. It's a it's like going to the gym. I don't want to do it, but I know it's good for me, but I don't know how to do it oftentimes. And I often think that sometimes coaching our kids can be really helpful when or even having that posture or mentality of I'm going to bring my kid to this thing and it's going to be more coaching. It's going to take a lot of endeavor on my part to help them awaken this smart in kind of what we're doing here. What would you think should be maybe a posture for parents as we do this? And maybe some like pinpoint highlights that we should maybe look at when we're coaching our kids to develop this and awaken the smarts when they might not naturally love it. Going outside for some kids, especially when they're self-smart with a group of people, is not like super fun. But there's some coaching I think we could do, right? What do you think about that?
Oh, it's a great question. I would be in favor of a family doing things together here. So not the mom and the dad sitting on the porch and watching their children, but actually being active with their children. It reminds me of back in the day, and you've heard me talk about this, Wayne, when I was writing the book about technology, and I had children say, "I wish my mom would play with me. She watches me play." And when I've shared that in a live audience, man, you could hear a pin drop after the audible gasp because we can be very guilty. We're tired. Adults are tired, and adults have their own stuff. And adults may not like the heat and the sweat that can happen when we're out and about. So we put our children first, right? We sacrifice for our kids. Why did we have them? That's a tough question for some to answer perhaps, but we get out of our own self-interest, if you will, and we put our kids first. And I think when a family does things together, the whole family goes to the botanical garden and you allow the 3-year-old and the 13-year-old to touch and explore and talk and wonder, I think it's really, really beneficial.
I love what Dr. Kathy had to say today. It reminds me of a passage that comes out of 1 Kings chapter 17, and I'll begin reading at verse 1. Now Elijah the Tishbite from Tishbe in Gilead said to Ahab, "As the Lord, the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word." Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah, "Leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there." So he did what the Lord told him. He went to the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan and stayed there. And the ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. Sometime later the brook dried up, because there had been no rain in the land. This retelling of what happened with Elijah here occurs during Ahab's reign. It's a time of deep idolatry and really national apostasy. Elijah was God's lone prophetic voice, and the drought was brought on by both judgment and it was meant to be a wake-up call. Elijah's solitude wasn't punishment. It was really preparation for something later on in life if you continue reading on in the chapter. In the stillness of nature, away from the noise of the corrupt culture, Elijah learns to depend completely on God. And in this quiet season, he's built the faith muscles that he needs to later call down fire on Mount Carmel and confront evil, as we find him doing later on in the book of 1 Kings. Children grow spiritually and emotionally when they learn to trust God, especially when it's quiet, and especially in natural places. As we talked about today, getting kids outdoors cultivates peace and attentiveness, and even a sense of provision that God could work in unique places. And oftentimes when we bring kids into nature, it pushes them into different smarts. We can develop their nature smarts with helping them engage creation and trust the rhythms and see the rhythms that God has designed. But it also develops some self-smart, where kids can reflect on what it looks like to be dependent on God and have resilience. And it also awakens body smart, where a kid can have an exploration opportunity, where they can deepen their understanding and even their memory as they feel the tactile realities of what it looks like to be in nature. It's such a powerful thing. And I hope that you take some time this week or maybe this weekend to take your kid outside and awaken the smarts inside of them. Be nature smart this week. And I hope that's an encouragement for you. And I hope this whole podcast is an encouragement for you. We're so grateful for you listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast, this daily segment, Facing the Dark. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, my name is Wayne Stender. We're so looking forward to seeing you here again tomorrow.